And we are live on air. I want to thank everyone for joining us earlier today. Tonight is going to be a recap and an extension to the forecast earlier, which was happened to be a well over 4-hour podcast. And so tonight we're going to be a little bit more brief. As the storm, Hurricane Ian, is still a powerful hurricane in the center of the state, exactly where we said it would be earlier today. And all the things we predicted it would do is what it has done. Just downgraded to Cat 2 status. In a few hours, it should be downgraded to Cat 1. And then by morning, it will be a tropical storm about to go back into the Atlantic and pick up some strength before it hits another state, South Carolina, in the coming days. So this is an ongoing event, and we're here to bring you all of the updates from today. Now, the storm surge inundation here was not far off from the truth. Fort Myers and South was hit the hardest, Naples as well. And my brother's house was inundated, as well as almost everyone else that did not build above the new standards. So what we have is probably tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of homes that are going to be completely, that are going to be extremely damaged in this event. The waters are just receding. High tide was at between 4 and 6 p.m., depending on where you were. And so since that time, the waters are receding. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. There's 145 people in the house. Now, the people that stayed, there are the people that got inundated. And the people that got inundated, they were all in evacuation zones. And so here's the bad news. If you're in an evacuation zone and you were one of the people that called 911 or emergency services, guess what they told you? They said, you're not supposed to be there. You were supposed to evacuate, so we won't be coming. So nobody's coming to help until the morning, until the sun comes up and this storm and the winds have passed. So that's what you get if you don't heed the warnings and you stay. There's no reason to be in your house with no electric in the heat of Florida, with mold and everything else that's going to be happening because of this event, just because you were stubborn and you didn't want to leave. Now, I know it does cost a little bit of money to get out of Dodge, but it really doesn't. You could have called friends and gone somewhere else without paying money. There's lots of options. You could have left the state early and gone camping, on and on and on. I don't want to get into it. But for those that stayed and are suffering and are wondering why there's no help coming, because they told you to evacuate. Pretty simple. Tampa Bay area is fine, just like we suggested earlier. It was actually going to be no flooding because the wind was going to push the water away from Tampa. And in fact, Tampa Bay drained today in a very unique phenomenon. And as a geologist, I can predict that without even knowing anything about meteorology. Can you imagine that? So many meteorologists don't even know how to do that type of science based on physics and weather. Can you imagine? So Tampa Bay barely got any rain. And you can see here, it's not even in barely got any rain, just some sprinkles. So all the people that heeded the warning and evacuated there, no reason to get out of Dodge, except that the storm could have hit Tampa. Had it hit north of Tampa, the same thing that happened to Fort Myers and Naples would have happened to Tampa, and there would have been much more devastation than what is occurring now. The storm is currently sitting in a place that has almost no infrastructure, very little things out where it's sitting north and west of Okeechobee there. Just a few towns, small towns, but it's headed towards Orlando. And the flooding rains that are going to come from this are quite epic. So real quick, let me welcome everyone to the show. Who's in the house here? The normal names: Kristen Adams is here, Pete Yeager, Cheryl Starkey, Elton Butterfield, Jax, welcome back. Victoria Cunningham, Kerr 57, Rusty Shackelford, Asfera, Shulamite, Reverend Red Wolf's in the house. Good to see you, bro. Oh, we got some rest. No, we didn't get any rest. I went to the dentist, and then now I'm back. I had to make dinner, and here we are to do this live stream. But during the day, I'm going to bed as soon as this is over. Trust me. I've only gotten 5 hours sleep in the last 2 days. So, all right, let's see who else is in the house. We got Ada Diaz. You're getting beat right now. You must be in Central Florida. Just Ruth, CR user, Pete Yeager. We're about to get into all the science and all the coverage from today. We have the best footage. We had the best live stream early today, other than Reed Timmer, but we were covering Reed live while he was barely being able to hold on. So we have some of the best footage from all around the world coming from the storm. Some of the first footage we were showing live, the 3 idiots that have been now gone viral. Our video didn't go viral, but we were the first people showing them live on air, on screen. You all can attest to that. So we've got Elaine Jonas in the house. Michelle Little, welcome to the program. Cynthia Graves. Trish Blassingame, good evening from North Texas. Aspen English, Tampa Bay's fine. We already answered that question. Geezer in the house, or Geezer and Cynthia. Yes, Geezer's in the house. We've got Life is a Gift. My sister-in-laws and her friends stayed, got damaged and scared, but you do stupid things and get stupid prizes. Exactly. My brother stayed and his house got flooded. But luckily, his in-laws live on his property, and their house was built to the new standards, which their first floor is way above his second floor. And so they were able to get into that house, I believe, and stay above that storm surge. Thank you, Tammy Ratfield, for recommending the thumbs up. DC Roscoe in the house. Gregory Knudsen. Desert Roses here. Reverend Fry. Did I miss anyone? Gordon McWhorter. Space Kimono. Rainbow Food Rocks is in the house. Sari C. Leslie Wilson. If I missed your name, I'm sorry. Cryptic Patriot. Gina, always a VIP. The World According to Jim. Leslie Thompson. Julie, Artfully Open. Randy Willis. Willie Fix It. Lookpin Hindug. Don't Tread on Me, Nevada. Mermaid Magic, Tringo. Lots of awesome people here. Brittany Has Eyes is back. She promised she'd be back, and she's here. Rising Sun 49. Ginger S. Will Barks. CR User. American Defender. Sparky 9, 2022. Charles Winmore. Melinda Biddle. Is it boom up in Canada? Bill Wallace. 20 Toes 7. I can't shout out thousands of people here. How many people are in the house? We're at 400. It's never happening. You're all keep commenting. We love you. All right. Thank you, guys. We're going to be coming in here. Here's the flood watch, tropical storm warnings as the storm is Cat 2 is moving up towards Orlando. The problem is that the National Hurricane Center hasn't even updated their last update, which is update 25A. We're going to refresh this, make sure we're giving you the best data. Yeah. So they are still sticking on 25A, which shows this storm as Cat 3, but we now know it's been downgraded to Cat 2. It's at 110 miles per hour instead of 115. The threshold for Cat 2, Cat 3 is 111 miles per hour, and this is according to the Safford-Simpson scale. So if you guys don't know what that is, let's just do a little science here and make this worth our while, shall we? So we're going to share the screen. We're going to talk about Safford-Simpson. We're going to show you all the salacious footage of all the flooding and devastation in just a moment. So, hang on for that and let's learn something. Types of damage due to hurricane winds. Cat 1, very dangerous, 74 to 95 miles per hour. Cat 2, extremely dangerous, 96 to 110. That's where we're at right now. So the lowest level of storms is where we're going to be at until tomorrow morning. Cat 3, where we just were, devastating damage will occur. So devastating damage has been occurring now for 12 plus hours on the state of Florida, West Coast, because it made landfall as a major Cat 4. Cat 4 goes 130 to 156, and we were at 155 for over 6 hours on this storm. So, and here's a really cool graphic. We might as well do it because we're all here and we're all learning about the Safford-Simpson scale. There is did I already get rid of it? No, it's right there. Where is it? Jesus. Holy macaroni. If we come down here, take a look at this. This is a great graphic. Why isn't it making it bigger? And here we have Cat 1 winds and the damage possible. And now we're going to morph into the Cat 2 winds. And you can see some of the shingles coming off, some of the trees bending. Cat 3 winds, where we just were, 111 to 130, you're going to have structural damage. You're going to have trees blowing down. Cat 4 is going to be devastating. So anything that's not hurricane proof will simply blow over. And Cat 5 is a complete loss of everything. So that's pretty cool. Pretty cool graphic that we could share with you there. Now what we're going to share is the current spaghetti models, so we can see where this storm is going. And these just came out a few hours ago. So there's the current position of the storm. They are all in agreement that they're going to move up right just east of Orlando, go back into the ocean, potentially re-strengthen. And then the majority of them are agreeing that they're going to make landfall just to the west of Columbia. Is that what we're looking at there? Savannah, Georgia is here. I don't know what city's right up here. Whatever city is next to Savannah, between Savannah and that other city in South Carolina, that's where the storm's going to go. And it's going to move up to Columbia. Yeah, Columbia is up here in the middle. So I don't know. Charlotte, is that in South Carolina? So there's two big cities here on the coast, and this storm is going to move up right between the middle of them. According to the models, and let's just bring you over here. So let's stay tuned with the boom, and let's just share the screen. And what we're going to go over to the National Hurricane Center here, and we're going to walk it all through together and show you how I do it. All right, so here we are at the National Hurricane Center. Here's Ian. If you just hover your finger over Ian, it's going to show you the current advisory and the update. This is the 8 p.m. Eastern Wednesday, September 28th, advisory number 25A. Maximum sustained winds at 115. Minimum central pressure at 960, and movement northeast at 8 miles per hour. So it's moving even slower. So if you click on Ian, then it'll take you right over to the key message for Hurricane Ian. Plus, it gives you all these boxes. This is all the other scientific data and information you may need to survive and thrive in the future in case you need to get out of Dodge or do your own weather forecasting for a future hurricane, if in fact you live in harm's way. So what we're going to do is read through this together. And so the key messages for Hurricane Ian as of 5 p.m. Eastern, Wednesday, September 28th, 2022. Number one. And we already know this happened. Catastrophic storm surge inundation already happened above ground level, 12 to 18 feet in many places, with destructive waves in Southwest Florida, including Englewood to Bonita Beach and Charlotte Harbor, as well as Naples. But what we have going on in the center of the state now is catastrophic wind damage is occurring. So heads up there. Heavy rainfall will then spread across the Florida Peninsula through Thursday and reach portions of the Southeast U.S. later this week. So that is what we're worried about now. So let's look at the U.S. rainfall potential together here. And north of Orlando and on the coast, we're talking 20 plus inches. There's a huge cone from Orlando up towards Jacksonville of 15 plus inches. So it is in fact going to be the northeast coast of Florida that may have just as much devastation as what we saw or what we're going to see in just a moment here in Fort Myers and Naples. Only this is going to be because of rivers and flash flooding from rain, not because of storm surge. So a completely different, more dangerous and erosional event happening with the rain that's going to be happening over the next 24 to 36 hours. Now, this rain cone is going to move up. There's an area of heavy rain. It's Charleston and Savannah, sorry. So between Charleston and Savannah, we're going to have some heavy rain. We're also going to have a very heavy rain pocket in western North Carolina out towards Chattanooga and Knoxville. But more like in Asheville, and the surrounding region in Cherokee could be flooded out. And there's some major river systems there that will also cause a problem. Like we said before, it's the initial storm surge is bad. All the people in Fort Myers and Naples that are still underwater, our hearts and prayers go out to you, but it's not over. It's going to continue to flood through the center of the state, and tomorrow could even be worse for the Northeast. And then it's going to be a progression here. So this is Wednesday. Thursday through Friday, we're going to have heavy flooding in the Northeast on some of the rivers. And so we're going to get to that. We have the river gauges up. We have the St. Johns River up. The St. Johns River is notorious for flooding with even small rain events. And this is going to be one of the biggest rain events in Northeast Florida history. That's pretty significant. This is one of my driveway alarms. I apologize for that. All right, let's get into some of the salacious footage because I know you all tuned in to see the good footage. There's 600 in the house. We appreciate all of you guys for tuning in. We're going to get to more of the forecasting, more of the dangers that are coming tomorrow for Northeast Florida. They're all happening now in the center of the state, luckily in very unpopulated areas. But what we're going to get to now is some of the footage over at my tweet box. And our Twitter has been on fire. So let's, because I've spent so much time sharing all of the pertinent information coming out from all the interwebs. For 15, 20 years, I've been doing this work as an organizer since the internet began. And so I have a very good canny knack of finding information. And so right before I left for the dentist, I went and I grabbed all of the best screen shares and everything I could possibly find from my tweet box. Here we are at Oppenheimer Ranch Project. If you don't know how to find our Twitter, it's at Diamond the Dave. Oppenheimer Ranch Project is at Diamond the Dave. So if you're on Twitter and you're looking how to find us, you go at Diamond the Dave, and that's us, Oppenheimer Ranch Project. It's not at Oppenheimer Ranch Project because I already had the Diamond the Dave in my early years of organizing for March Against Monsanto. So I just kept the same Twitter, same tweeter. So if you want to tweet my way, sometime around 4 years ago, we got completely banned on Twitter. We had risen up to 3,400 followers, and then we've gotten no followers for 4 years until now. I started shouting out the channel, and we're doing pretty good. We're getting up there towards 4,000. We want to get that to around 40,000 because we already have 120,000 plus subscribers on our two main YouTube channels. So we think we should have that kind of impact on all social media platforms. So that's what we're going for here. So please check us out at Diamond the Dave. If you don't know, I want you to subscribe to our Twitter, then you haven't been listening. So let's get to some of the amazing footage that we've brought up here on the tweeter over the last day. I don't even have Twitter up here. So how could I even have Twitter up here? Really freaking me out, bro. All right, let's wait for it. There it is. Huh. All right. So here we are. I just put this one up because it is one of the best examples. There are a lot of people doing mashups and hash-ups and time lapses because they can grab the imagery from already existing cams. But this one was one of the better ones from Fort Myers Beach, where you can see the beach is just to the left here of the screen, just to the left of that high-rise condo or hotel or whatever that is. And you can see how the storm surge inundation comes over the dune. And once it breaches the dune, then basically the city of Fort Myers is a big depression. And it just fills up like a lake. And that's what happened in Naples and Fort Myers. Once the dunes are breached, which is a high protective barrier to the mainland, that ocean just flows right in and equalizes. And literally you get the Gulf of Mexico covering Florida. And that's exactly what happened here in these storm surge inundation regions. And here we're watching it happen in Fort Myers. And then you can see there's even wave action happening here in the middle of the road. So that is completely devastating. And just the beginning of it, that was midday in Fort Myers. And the water really didn't peak until high tide, which was around 4 p.m. So that is the first of our coverage there. This is amazing coverage where a guy goes down into his basement because he hears some noises and he watches the pressure. This is in Naples. A door get exploded in. Fantastic. And he made it. Kudos to that bro. All right, so we're going to move on with our amazing coverage of the highlights of the storm earlier today. This was the best lightning footage from Stream the Vote. and he says, "Holy F-bomb, Hurricane Ian." And this multiple.
Oh my God.
Something's on fire.
Listen to these folks. It's hilarious. They're all drinking heavily.
Oh my God.
Something's on fire.
Brother, I just shit and pissed myself.
So they just sit and piss themselves.
Oh my God.
Something's on fire.
Brother, I just shit and pissed myself. Oh my God.
Something's on fire.
Brother, I just shit and pissed myself.
So I figure we would
God.
start this off with sharing you some of the more funny footage, as we're about to show you some of the most devastating footage you will ever see, in my opinion, in your entire life. And it's all thanks to this storm, Hurricane Ian, whose external bands extend all the way up to Greenland and into the Arctic. This is a massive storm. People were comparing it to Charlie, and they're completely delusional because they didn't realize Charlie is literally 1/10. The entire storm, Hurricane Charlie, could fit into the eye of Hurricane Ian. So let's leave the forecasting to the experts. And there's very few of them. Now here's some devastating footage we're going to be sharing.
You got the video? Oh,
This is Naples.
I
These are houses literally floating down the river.
I'm trying. Wow. You got the video? Oh, I can't do video because I'm on the phone. I got it. Here it is. Fucking house going by. Here it is. I'm trying. Wow. You got the video? Oh, I can't do video because I'm on the phone. I got it. Here it is.
Now, some of these houses are hurricane proof, and that's why they're completely standing there. Even the screen is still up.
You got the video?
Now, they're going to be damaged, and they have to be gutted and dried out and, fixed. But houses like this that are floating down the middle of the river, clearly that is not a recoverable
You got the video? Oh, I can't
abode
do video because I'm on the phone.
in any sense.
I got it. Here it is.
And then can you imagine just what we're looking at here in the first of some of the devastating videos, the amount of debris. Look at the pile of debris in front of the house,
Oh, I can't
which
do
is
video 'cause I'm on
simply
the
in
phone.
other houses
I got it.
smashed
Fucking house going
that
by.
once were there.
Here it is. I'm trying.
So this is a very devastating storm. And here we are at Fort Myers. There's cars floating around. That car has its hatchback open. Like, what, did he have to go get something out of it? And if you think of this is what I'm thinking here. There are so many well-educated people worth $1 million or more that own these properties with these $75,000 cars with their hatchback open. And they were all told to evacuate. And they stayed because they know better. Well, we've said it from the beginning of the channel. You get what you get. All you would have to do is spend a half an hour watching some hurricane footage on hurricanes that have hit Florida, and you would be like, yeah, let's go to the center of the state. Let's go to our cousin Jimmy's in Georgia. But no. Let's have a hurricane party and drink heavily. I do digress. Here is Fort Myers footage at the peak of the storm surge. This is right around 3 p.m. downtown in Fort Myers. Yep. Yeah, Charles, that's what people do. They just say, oh, it's already wet, so I'll open the doors. Said no one ever. You need the destroyed car to claim it in insurance, so you certainly don't want it to wash out to sea, which is what many cars have done. Now, I can only imagine the footage we'll have in the morning after this all recedes, the amount of debris and trash and destruction. It's going to take years for these people to rebuild in this region. It will be the largest economic disaster in North American history. And this is the worst part of it. Will the current administration use this disaster to force climate lockdowns? Because they're pushing the narrative that this has something to do with climate change. So, will they lock us all in and freeze our bank accounts? Look at the power of this storm. Now, we were trying to explain to this earlier that the only areas that were at risk were south of the storm because of the onshore flow here, that everybody north was going to fare quite well, and they all did. But Cape Coral and south, not so much. And so we were even warning as early as 6 a.m., I believe, in our live stream to get out. I wonder how many people listened or heeded our warnings. Now, there have been only 4 hurricanes on record that have made landfall on the continental U.S. stronger than Hurricane Ian, and they were all Cat 5. The Labor Day hurricane of 1935 had winds of 185 miles per hour. We had Hurricane Camille, the second strongest, in 1969. Now, those are the 2 strongest storms to make landfall in the U.S., and they were before climate change. So why aren't they climate change? This is how stupid the narrative is. We have Hurricane Andrew in 1992 at stronger than Ian. Why isn't that climate change? And we have Hurricane Michael in 2018, stronger than Ian. So climate change was stronger in 2018 than now? Fucking frauds. This camera was 6 feet off the ground in Estero Boulevard in Fort Myers and made it for quite some time. This is early in the day, before the peak storm surge. And this is downtown Fort Myers on Estero Boulevard, where there are literally waves breaking in downtown Fort Myers at 2 p.m. This was some of the most devastating footage I got right before I left for the dentist. And I knew at this point my brother's house was underwater. And so when I got to the dentist, I called him. Well, actually, I texted him. And I said, did you guys get out? I hope you got out and you're safe. And he said, no, the house is flooded. Now, luckily, he had a safe place to go. Many people that are in their flooded houses with no place to go are in their flooded houses or on their roof. And according to the powers that be, if you're in an evacuation zone, no one's coming to get you till tomorrow. It's because it's your fault. So what we're looking at here is more catastrophic damage in Fort Myers Beach. You can see the storm surge here is up to the top of the roofs in many of the houses. Yeah, Don Lemon tried to add climate change to it, and he got shut down. As he should. He should have got a foot in his ass, but he just got a talking to. This is the top expert on hurricanes in the entire world he was interviewing. And he didn't even know that that's who the person he was interviewing was. He's like, oh no, I grew up there. You're getting much worse. Because I said so, because I'm Don Lemon. It's almost hard to go through all this footage with you, but let's just get through it all, because that way you don't have to go troll around for it. We already found it all.
Over that pickup truck. Now, this is the same shot earlier.
So this is cars floating down the street in Naples.
When we were doing the live report, right before we took it live to air, there was actually somebody's boat had come floating right down with the storm surge through there in the distance, and the water is up over that pickup truck. Now, this is the same.
There's Nibiru in the background.
That I saw.
See that? See that stellar core floating up there? Yep, I knew it.
Live to air. There was actually somebody's boat.
So this is where my father lives.
Right down with the storm surge through there in the distance, and the water is up over that pickup truck. Now, this is the same shot earlier that I saw when we were doing the live.
All right, so here's Fort Myers. This is the most shared tweet from the Fort Myers area. And it's pretty scary. Now, in case y'all didn't know, Florida is the most hurricane-prone state in the nation because it has a Gulf Coast and an Atlantic coast. And overall, the longest coastline of any of the hurricane-prone states, which are from all the coastal states from Maine to Texas, as well as California, Oregon, and Washington. But Florida is in the warmest water on all of its shores, and it gets hit regularly by 3 to 6 hurricanes annually. But in recent decades, we haven't had those numbers. Very few major hurricanes have hit Florida. So people have become complacent, especially on the west coast of the Gulf of Florida, where areas like Tampa haven't seen a major hurricane for 101 years. And they still haven't. They saw one today to the south, but it barely did anything. So that's the problem. It has nothing to do with climate change. It has to do with developers and scams. And I can prove it to you. So before we move on with more footage here, let me just prove it to you. And I'm just going to bring up one article. We're going to shut that down. Let's share one article with you that may just blow your mind. First, we're going to look at the tide gauge. So it's already peaked. The tide's coming down. It's good news. So the water is receding there. So that's the first piece we'll share. And we'll get to some of the river gauges in just a moment. But I think this article will be quite enlightening. And a lot of people that are tuning in now, we have 900 watching, will be quite interested to see. And then we'll get back to some more of that salacious footage because we have it all parsed up here and ready to go. But what we want to show you is some telling information about a boom town that shouldn't exist. And that's Cape Coral, Florida. It was built on total lies, and one big storm could wipe it off the map. Oh, and it's also the fastest growing city in the United States. Cape Coral, Florida. The ads promised paradise, legendary lazy living in a waterfront wonderland. The brochures sold the Florida dream, an enchanted city in the making. Average temperature, 71 degrees. Without winter worries. No state income taxes. Cape Coral was America's land of tomorrow. Just $20 down and $20 a month. This was the swampland scam back in the 60s and 70s. Yet it got built out with these $1 million houses every 150 feet. And they're all at sea level. So any storm to come by here, Fort Myers, Cape Coral, well, it's swampland. What did you expect? So these people were duped into living in harm's way. And that is the problem. This isn't the first time people have been duped into living in harm's way. This has been happening. I mean, Alligator Alley, they're selling the Everglades, for goodness sakes. So when the water comes up there, you get eaten by alligators. Imagine that. You won't even remember how stupid that deal was. But I do digress. So let's, I hope that was helpful for a lot of you. This is not like a really safe place that climate change affected. This is a shithole swamp that they built another foot higher, put $1 million houses everywhere, crossed their fingers, and we're like, we hope nothing happens. But when you hope nothing happens, shit happens. Trust me. This is one of the early power line fires. And there's probably thousands of them across the state. Watch this footage of the neighbor's house. The porch just gets ripped off here. What is he thinking? Honey, you got to come out here and see this. Oh! Yep. Oh, never mind. It's gone. Baby, you got to come out here. Look at this. I think it's about... Oh, yeah. Yep, it just did it. No, I think it hit Bill's car. If I missed anyone's super chat, I apologize. It's taking a lot for me to get all this material up here. So, and if nobody super chatted, we still love. So what we're basically doing here is a highlights reel of all the best footage from the last 12 hours. And we'll even bring in, I think, maybe Jim
About storm surge.
Cantoro.
For most people, that feels like a flood.
this
This
deep,
is
you
storm
guys think?
surge. This is coming into Naples. There is no delineation anymore between the Gulf of Mexico and Naples at this point. There used to be a few hundred feet of beach over there. It's not there. We were just talking about roadways becoming waterways. That's exactly what we're looking at over here. There were cars nicely parked along the right and the left of this roadway. Take a look at the cars now. They're all bunched into each other over
Because I got to unclick
in
it.
the middle of the road behind us. But look, Randy, take a look at it. This is storm surge. This is what we're talking about. To most people, it seems like a flood. Take a look at that. Those carports across. The Gulf of Mexico is now part of Naples, Florida at the moment. Now, we are about an hour away from high tide. I have to thank a particular meteorologist who sort of sent me the exact time for where we're going to hit the high tide. But it's going to coincide with some of the worst of the actual storm. So when you combine the fact,
So he doesn't know how to find a
we're
high
not
tide.
there yet,
And he's a meteorologist?
and we've got a lot of wind right here. Randy, take a look.
A meteorologist does not know how to find the high tide in
this
this region.
For most people, that feels like a flood. This
all
is
the
storm
technology
surge.
he
This
has
is the
right now.
ocean
This is
coming into Naples. There is
very
no
telling for you
delineation
folks
anymore
watching this live
between the
stream.
Gulf of Mexico
They're one of the top
and Naples
meteorologists
at this
is so
point. There used to
clueless.
be
A friend
few
of him,
hundred feet of beach
friend
over
of his
there.
had
It's
to
not
figure
there.
out what the
We
high
were just
tide
talking about
where he was.
roadways becoming
Literally
waterways.
take
That's exactly
me
what we're looking
less
at over
than
here.
5
There were cars
seconds
nicely
to
parked
locate
along the
a high
right and
tide
the
in
left
any
of
region in
this
the United
roadway.
States.
Take a look at the cars now. They're all bunched
If I had a
into each other
telephone.
over there. They've floated many, many feet. There's a car in the middle.
I can't even listen to the guy. He's such a fraud. Someone dropped him in this spot to sound excited and to report on stuff that his friend had to tell him when the high tide was. It's embarrassing. I'd be embarrassed. That was my job. So this is Tropic Nick Underwood. This was his roughest flight ever through a hurricane. He's been through a lot of them. This is these guys flying through the hurricane. All kind of stuff was coming off the walls. This was when it was a strong Cat 4, 155 mile an hour wind run, right before landfall.
We're all right. We're all right.
At one point, the plane dropped 1,200 feet when they hit the eye wall.
There goes the signs. There goes the beds. Holy cow. These
are our hurricane hunters. strapped in this giant plane with all this equipment. It's like Reed Timmer on steroids. One day he'll have a plane. We'll just fly it right through tornadoes.
You got it coming out of this.
834 in the house. Thank you all for tuning in. We appreciate it. Please hit that thumbs up button. This was the Hurricane Hunter earlier today, flying through the Cat 4 storm right before it made landfall north of Fort Myers. Pretty awesome stuff there. And here's another quote from Nick. I have flown storms for the last 6 years. This flight in Hurricane Ian on Kermit, which is hashtag NOAA number 42, was the worst I've ever been on. I've never seen so much lightning in an eye. And here is some of the most devastating footage from Sanibel Island when the eye wall hit. Live storm surge
right
cam
over our
5.
camera right now, and it's amazing that we're even seeing these pictures.
That is pretty devastating right there. Thank you, Melinda Biddle. I just saw a $10 super chat at Magnetic Reversal News. We appreciate you.
It's right over our camera right now, and it's amazing that we're even seeing these pictures.
Crazy stuff. Another time lapse here. And this is what took out the dunes right here. See this bush? Once the bush is gone, then all of Naples is able to flood with the storm surge. So that's what took it out right there. Right at the pier here. Once the bush is gone, the water is in Naples. And that's how the dunes got breached in Naples earlier today. And again, our hearts, our prayers going out to people that are in harm's way right now. There are tens of thousands of people that are stuck in their flooded homes, on the roof, in the attic, in the second floor, at neighbors' houses, shivering, not shivering. They're in Florida. But let's talk about the power outages before we get into any more of this salacious footage. We predicted 2 million power outages by midnight. We already hit that mark. We certainly aren't gloating. We are just proving to you that there are independent scientists that know way more than everyone else out there in the mainstream. Almost every prediction we make on the channel, we only make them in confidence because we are well prepared to back up our prediction if they don't come true. The only problem is they seem to all come true. So we're going to come over here to the Florida power outage map where I froze it at 2 million, 2007 power outages. And this was at 8:15 p.m. It's now 9:14 p.m., 1 hour later. And we're going to see live on the air in 1 hour how many more power outages there are. And I just hit refresh. Boom. So we've got 69,000 people per hour with the power going out. So in the next 10 hours, there'll be another 500,000. So this will be probably at 3 million by morning. It might be worse because there's very few customers out here where the storm is. So tomorrow when it comes up towards Orlando, what we could see is this number skyrocket towards 5 million. And especially with the flooding rains that are going to happen tomorrow up here in the Northeast, I'm going to say a conservative number would be 5 million by tomorrow afternoon. And that number is going to drop by half in a few days. But still, there are going to be millions of people without power for a very long period of time. There are going to be some people in this region without power for weeks, some people without power for months. And the same goes for water. Some people will not get water for days, weeks, or months. So knowing that, when you wake up in the morning and the sun comes out and the power's off and they tell you it's not coming on, don't just sit there. Secure your belongings. Can you imagine the amount of criminal elements and looters that are coming to this region? Protect your family. Protect your things. If you don't have ways to protect them, get out of there. Take them with you. But these are all things you should have considered before the storm. So we already hit our it's up to 2,075,000. Yeah, Amber Lynn, it's going to be bad tomorrow in Orlando, so I hope they're prepared. Yeah. Orlando could see some of the most catastrophic flooding it has ever seen in history, as well as the St. Johns River. A lot of people are worried about that. So rather than share you all that information tonight on the river levels, we'll just do it tomorrow because that's when it will be peaking and that's when it will be pertinent. Puerto Rico has its electric on. Over 80% of the island has been recovered. Cuba, the entire grid got knocked out. So Cuba's out. And when people woke up in Florida and found out that people were dead in Cuba and the grid had got knocked out at Cat 3 and this was going to make landfall at Cat 4, why they didn't leave, anybody's guess. Amber Lynn with the big boom in the super chat. We appreciate you. Oh. Yeah, the Hurricane Hunter flight was a rush. I guess she was in there. I hope they have guns. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Please hit that thumbs up. Share this on your social media as we are shadow banned and unsubscribers. Yeah, it's a sad day for those ahead who stayed. But it's a lesson. This is a learning. This is a very humbling experience for many. I saw some images of people swimming in their first floor of their $1 million house, and they weren't upset. And that's how you really have to deal with this. Every day brings struggles. Small ones, big ones, social, financial, relationship. It's how you deal with it and move forward that makes you a better person. You can bottle it up. You can get resentments, or you could deal with it. Clean your plate and keep it moving. This is how you keep a smile on your face. In difficult times. So consider those words of wisdom. All right, let's share a few more things before we go to bed. Let's take a look at another issue that we might be dealing with. Pollution from Florida's mining is now a huge concern. Now, if you don't know, now you know that Florida is home to some phosphate mining, and some of the toxic waste from the phosphate industry is held in these ponds, which they built up these big berms for, which are pretty much higher than anywhere else in Florida, under the guise that it will be safe. Now, the only problem is that that may not be true. In fact, the polluted leftovers of Florida's phosphate fertilizer mining industry, which has more than 1 billion tons in stacks that resemble enormous ponds. These are all at risk for leaks or other contamination right now. Florida has 24 such phosphogypsum stacks, most of them concentrated in mining areas in the central part of the state where, well, Ian is crushing right now. 30 million tons of slightly radioactive waste is generated every year, and that could possibly flood out onto the state. It says here, a major storm event like the one we were bracing for can inundate the facilities with more water than the open air ponds can handle. We are extremely concerned about the potential impacts Hurricane Ian may have on the phosphate facilities. These are around the state. So we're looking at radioactive toxic contamination of the state. And this is farmland all around here. Take a look. So that's a developing story that's happening tonight. And we'll know by tomorrow afternoon how these phosphate stacks are holding up. Sad state of affairs. Oh, what else do we have for you here? Let's listen a little bit about Ron DeSantis and his preparedness just earlier this evening.
And will likely, be less in the coming hours than it has been up to this point. But we know that this has been a big storm, and it's done a lot of damage as it is going to continue to move through the state of Florida. You're going to see hurricane force winds in places in central Florida, perhaps. It's clearly a very strong tropical storm all the way until it exits the Florida peninsula in the Atlantic Ocean. There are, as much as we're focused on Southwest Florida, very important, obviously, when you have a storm of this nature. I think at landfall, it's going to be behind only the Labor Day hurricane, Hurricane Andrew, and Hurricane Michael in terms of intensity. I think we're going to end up seeing that. It may end up being a Category 5, but at a minimum, it's going to be a very strong Category 4 that's going to rank as one of the top 5 hurricanes to ever hit the Florida peninsula. So that damage is ongoing. It's very, very important. But the fact is, there's going to be damage throughout the whole state, and people in other parts of the state, be prepared for some impacts. And you are seeing counties in different parts of the state issue evacuation orders. Clay County in Northeast Florida, which we do anticipate some major flooding events in Northeast Florida. I think folks that are familiar with the St. Johns River know that when you have weather like this, you will see this. And so Clay County has issued mandatory evacuations of low-lying areas along the St. Johns River. Flagler County has issued mandatory evacuations of its barrier islands, low-lying areas, and mobile homes. Nassau has issued evacuation orders for low-lying areas. St. Johns County is evacuating coastal low-lying areas, including the city of St. Augustine, as well as the city of St. Augustine Beach. Putnam County has recommended evacuation for low-lying areas and areas that have a history of flooding. And Sumter County is advising evacuations of mobile homes. And so those are places that are hundreds and hundreds of miles away from the initial impact in Southwest Florida, and yet they are having to evacuate folks that are living in vulnerable areas. We have over 1.1 million reported power outages. Now, there are crews that are still working outside of Southwest Florida, but just understand that number is going to grow. You're going to see more power outages as this storm moves through the center part of our state and before it exits into the Atlantic coast. There are 100 portable cell phone towers ready to be deployed into Southwest Florida once it is safe to enter, and should that be needed. We want to make sure people are staying out of the way of emergency crews and out of floodwaters and away from all down power lines. As soon as emergency crews can get in, they are going to get in. As soon as it's safe to go and clear the roadways, Florida Department of Transportation is going to go in and clear those roadways. These are all on standby. They are ready to go. They understand the importance of a really, really quick response. As I mentioned earlier today, we have now officially sent the letter with the request to the Biden administration for a major disaster declaration for all 67 counties, requesting the federal government do 100% reimbursement upfront for 60 days to ensure that we can quickly move forward into this response and recovery phase. And I know sometimes they wait till different damage assessments are made, but in this situation, you got a massive Category 4 storm that you compare Charlie to this. This is way, way, way bigger than Charlie. It was as strong as Charlie coming in, but Charlie was much smaller. So this is a big one. And I think we all know there's going to be major, major impacts. We are, not only are there 42,000 linemen, they are positioned all across the state of Florida. As soon as it's safe to go, those personnel are going to go in to resume power. And that's something that's very, very important. In terms of rescue efforts, obviously there's robust efforts in each of these.
I just like to pause the governor right here, Governor DeSantis, and give my 2 cents in here. Earlier today, he was questioned by someone in the mainstream media, which is obviously a liberal woke tard. And they claimed that Governor DeSantis hadn't done any preparation for this storm. That's what a reporter, a quote unquote reporter, said to this man. And he shut them down. He basically embarrassed them. He said, whoa, shut up. You're a liar. He called for a state of emergency before there was even a hurricane. This is unprecedented. He has 44,000 linemen from all over the United States ready for tomorrow morning to go in and restore power. Who are these people that claim they're journalists? Who watches this garbage? If you're listening to me now and you listened to this earlier today, why are you watching mainstream media? 100% of everything they say is propaganda, has nothing to do with helping people get out of harm's way or anything. It's all based on an agenda, and it's disgusting. So that's the biggest I'll blow up tonight.
Counties. I mean, some of these are major counties in our state, like Lee County, Collier County. They've got great response teams. The state of Florida, we are providing a lot of support that's staged and ready to go. We have almost 250 aircraft, more than 1,600 high water vehicles, and more than 300 boats of all drafts and sizes, including 250 already stationed in the major impacted areas, and nearly 50 that are staged and immediately ready to come in. And so with water this high, these operations may need to be waterborne operations. Now, there are some where you're going to need to use the water to get to some of the barrier islands anyways. But you look at like Collier County, I mean, downtown Naples is flooded. It's probably going to subside as the time goes on, but they're prepared for a lot of different eventualities. We're thankful for the states that have sent us resources, and we're very, very appreciative of them stepping up and helping Florida. As this storm passes your community, understand it's still a very hazardous situation. You're going to have down power lines. You're going to have a possibility of harm's way because of standing water, misuse of generators. I asked the Department of Emergency Management, Kevin, to produce for me the rundown of the fatalities through direct.
That's a big one. Misuse of generators. He's probably going to get into it, but the number one fatalities after the fact are stupid people getting electrocuted, carbon monoxide, running generators in their apartment. Generators are for outside, folks. Do not put them inside your house. And the fact that the general population is so inept, so disconnected from survivalism or using equipment or generators because they work in a cubicle and they do some nonsense for people that don't give a fuck about them. This is the problem. Those people go home, they buy a brand new generator and they start it up in their living room. And that night, everyone in the house dies because they're idiots. Don't be an idiot.
The impacts of storms versus the aftermath. And in Hurricane Irma, there were 7 fatalities directly because of the storm, and there were 77 that were a result of post-storm. And a lot of that is standing water, down power lines, misuse of generators. So please just take precaution. Obviously, a ferocious storm coming in, very hazardous, very ominous. We know the life-threatening nature of that. But once the storm goes, once there is apparent calm, there are still plenty of hazards out there. So just please make sure that you're taking the proper precautions. I'm happy that Volunteer Florida has now activated the Florida Disaster Fund. Sometimes people say, hey, we want to help. What can we do? And there's really two things you can do. One, send some donations, money. The other can be donate your time. What's not helpful is sending items and sending things to us. We have a lot of stuff pre-positioned. If there's a need for other stuff, Kevin and his team will work. FEMA, all these other groups can work to provide that. But if you provide money to some volunteer organizations and charity groups, they can make a big impact in people's lives. And if you're willing to volunteer your time, there's going to be ways you can be put to work, because there's going to be a lot of people that are going to need help on the back end of this thing. So if you want to contribute, you can go to floridadisasterfund.org or text disaster to 20222. For those who want to come and volunteer, we have an official volunteer portal at Volunteer Florida, www.volunteerflorida.org, to find volunteer opportunities. This storm is doing a number on the state of Florida. It is going to continue to move through this state today and through much of tomorrow. And there's going to continue to be a number of adverse effects. I can tell you that as soon as it moves beyond Southwest Florida, you're going to see a massive surge of personnel and supplies to be able to help those who are in need, get people back on their feet, and help to rebuild those communities. Kevin?
Thank you, Governor. I think everybody should know that the governor is extremely committed to being involved in this response. And he was here with me till late last night, and he was here with me early this morning, and he has not been anywhere but very near me the entire time. So, Governor, thank you so much for your leadership in that area. I mean, it means a lot to me. It means a lot to the leadership. As the governor said, Hurricane Ian has made landfall this afternoon as a Category 4. Winds of 155 miles an hour. I'm not going to read all the statistics that the governor's mentioned, but I'll bring a couple of new ones here. 1,100 resource requests have been we've received 1,100 resource requests. We have fulfilled 900 of those. Again, the difference of the 200 is stuff that we just cannot get out on the road right now. We're working as quickly as possible to address those needs. We have well over 200 shelters open. We have 42,000 restoration personnel. We literally have, with first responders across the state and additional ones coming in, there's well over 10,000 responders statewide ready to do stuff. As the storm,
they sound really prepared here.
Its way across Florida, I remind Floridians to stay indoors if you're in the path of the storm. If you're sheltering in place in the path of the storm and you still have power and Wi-Fi, please visit floridadisaster.org/info to fill out our shelter in place survey. We've had a lot of people answer that and give us that information. That helps us provide critical information to first responders about the demographics of your household so that they can aid your family as soon as possible. Please keep in mind that first responders may not be able to immediately enter impacted areas to assist you due to the safety hazards. I will say we are planning a 3-prong response to handle that specific issue. We have personnel staged to come in via ground, via vehicles. We have personnel staged to come in via air. with aerial deployed search and rescue assets. And then we also have the Coast Guard and the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission ready to come in by sea for those barrier islands and beachfront properties. So we will have a response mechanism that involves all three of those arms. Shelter in place survey, again, I just reiterated, is floridadisaster.org/info. If you need immediate assistance, please dial 911. That site is not a replacement for 911. If it is calm outside, you may be in the eye of the storm. As the eye of the storm continues to move inland, is getting ready to enter areas such as Hendry County, Glades County. Do not go outside if all of a sudden the wind stops. In this situation, that means you're in the eye of the hurricane. Seek shelter immediately, get into an interior room and protect yourself. Do not walk or drive through flooded areas. Floodwaters can stall your car and sweep you and your car away in the blink of an eye. We received reports of isolated tornadoes across East Central Florida. If you're in a tornado warning, again, seek an interior room free of windows, get low, and put something over the top of your head to protect yourself. If a tornado warning, self-deployments. We do not want individuals self-deploying out on their own. That is very, very dangerous. Leave that to the professionals that are trained in how to do that. Do not take your personal boat out in these situations. We do not want to have to respond to yet another problem. The governor mentioned there are more deaths as a result of indirect situations than the actual direct situation of storm surge, wind at the beginning of a storm. So please, what we want you to do more than anything else is stay safe. Please be careful out there. Again, Governor, thank you.
Cajun Navy, they're on the way, right?
There are reports that they are on the way.
So I think the Cajun Navy is on the way, and okay, there we go. I mean, look, we really welcome. I mean, those are some really battle-hardened folks, and so Florida welcomes their support, and honestly, particularly Louisiana, because they've dealt with so much, and so the governor's been great. And look, we've got a long way to go before this storm exits the state, and there's going to be a lot of need to get into these communities, particularly in Southwest Florida, and offer the immediate assistance. But I do think the three-pronged strategy, we're going in by ground, air, and by sea, means that all hands are on deck. And there's going to be people that are going to be in harm's way. And what I've said is the folks were told in these areas of the hazards. They were given time to be able to make arrangements and to leave. Some chose not to do that. They would have probably been better off doing that. Nevertheless, if people are in harm's way, we're going to go and do whatever we can to help those folks. And so that is those operations are going to commence as soon as it's safe to do so. Certainly, I would say no later than first thing in the morning.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, no later. As soon as it's light outside and people are able to do it, and then it begins with the clearing the roads, making sure that the electrical folks can get in there. I was able to thank a number of these linemen. We went over to Lake City where a number of them are staged. These are great folks. They're coming from all across the country. I mean, I met people from Alabama, from Texas, from Louisiana. They're all coming to Florida. When we were driving back to Tallahassee from Lake City, I saw this beautiful sight of all these electrical vehicles coming where they had all the electrical equipment on. And these are folks that are going to help put people's power back on. It was just a procession of them. So we talked about 42,000. I bet you after today, there's probably going to be significantly even more. So you really are seeing just a great logistical effort to put all hands on deck in this response. Okay, any questions?
Yeah, Governor, you mentioned getting calls from people who have not evacuated, calls for help. About how many calls people are we talking about here?
Evan, you want to take that?
So right now I don't want to give you a solid number because it'd be a guess. I know earlier today we had the initial report was 21. And then we, because of the 911 issues in that Southwest Florida area, we had one small rural county that was answering calls for the larger county saying that they had hundreds of calls. So I can't really quantify that right now, but just go off the words that the emergency management directors at the local level told me.
Yes.
Spoken to the president about getting that 100% coverage. I mean, has he? I know there's a lot of folks out there who are pushing for Florida to get that 100% coverage, but I know.
So when we spoke yesterday, I mean, he said, all hands on deck, that he wants to be helpful. And he said, ask whatever you need, ask us. So he was inviting us to request support. And so that we think that this is probably the best thing that we can get at this juncture, given what we're dealing with. And so hopefully we'll get a favorable response on that.
Mr. Guthrie mentioned this earlier, but this is obviously a big flooding event, and a lot of these places might not have flood insurance. Do you have a sense of, how exposed a lot of these people are who don't have coverage from flood insurance?
Not yet, but I think the issue is significant in the sense that these are not people that necessarily live in a quote flood zone. They live and they're asked, the realtor says, you're not in a flood zone. Well, they're not going to get the flood insurance. And I totally understand why people don't do that. But just because you're not in a quote flood zone does not mean that you're not at risk of a catastrophic event like this. And so I think you're going to see some clearly. How many, that remains to be seen. Now, there are programs that FEMA has to try to provide relief for people, but it is not going to be commensurate to having had a policy. And so this is an issue that we're going to have to deal with. But I do think it will be something, because we deal with this in other storms across the country, including Florida. When you have this about the homeowners policy will cover certain things, but the flood policy covers probably the most significant risk for most homeowners in Florida, given the risk of flooding that we have in so many different parts of our state. So we're sensitive to that. There's obviously going to be, some folks that are going to be in need of support and relief, and we're obviously going to work as best we can. I will say that people have been asking about some of the overall homeowners insurance with like Citizens. Citizens, I think right now they're between 6 and 7 billion of surplus. They're modeling, based on paying out a lot of money in claims for this, was that they would still have between 4 and 5 billion in surplus. And so they view themselves as being able to weather this. Individual carriers, they have to go through a stress test to be able to have their policies approved. And so this year they had tested under.
Okay, so we're going to move on a little bit to the coverage here. We're going to shut down Ron DeSantis. And we'll show you just a few other tidbits before we move on tonight. So it's already almost 10 p.m. I didn't expect to go this late, but I appreciate all of you 661 lovely people for tuning in tonight. Let's just go over the GFS models for the total accumulated precipitation. And this is going to be the catastrophic flooding that happens now through Friday. And you can see here, north, and the reason why we're talking about northeastern Florida when it's actually north central, northeast is up here. So it is in the northeast, but we're looking at catastrophic rain of 24 inches. This 24 inches is going to fall by Friday morning. So we're going to see a lot of developments happening with the storm as it moves up and out of Dodge. We could also see catastrophic flooding on the Outer Banks here and the Delmarva Peninsula based on how the storm unravels here. So let's just switch this over to the European version, and then you can get all of the theories. This is the the European model, showing most of that rain falling in the Gulf and just a limited portion here on the coast. And hopefully that's the way it goes. So the latest update for the Hurricane Ian, we'll bring that in for you. Thank you, Dr. Enoch. Welcome to the show. Billion galactic thanks for your super chat. Let's bring up this tab here. We saw the ESMFW. So we're looking at our advisory number 26. Ian has now downgraded all the way to Cat 1, 90 mile per hour winds. Minimum central pressure at 972 kilobars. That's great, except the excessive rain is going to continue. It's now slowed down to moving just 8 miles an hour to the north-northeast. Okay, so we do have a new key message just updated 11 p.m. Eastern. Severe life-threatening storm surge we know about. 8 to 10 feet above ground level, along with destructive waves, is ongoing along the Florida coastline from Englewood to Bonita Beach. It's still flooding there, but yet receding. That's good news. Hurricane force winds will continue through the center of the state. Widespread life-threatening catastrophic flooding with major to record river flooding will continue across portions of central Florida tonight, with considerable flooding in northern Florida, southeast Georgia, and eastern South Carolina expected tomorrow through the end of the week. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. There is a danger of life-threatening storm surge on Thursday and Friday along the coasts of northeast Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina, with hurricane conditions possible. So let's look at the storm surge potential before we go to bed here. And we'll just take a look at the peak surge. Hopefully this is still coming up there. You can all see this, right? 650 in the house. We're looking at the experimental peak storm surge. Don't worry about the experimental part. That just means they don't want you to use this to save your life so you can sue them. But we're certainly going to use it. I can't even find it. My goodness. There we are. Experimental peak storm surge. And you can see we do have an area from Flagler Beach in Florida all the way up to Little River Inlet in North Carolina. We could be seeing some catastrophic flooding, especially from Flagler to Altamasa Sounds. This can be 4 to 6 feet of surge coming in here when the storm moves your way. As the eye moves here, it's going to be pushing this onshore, the same onshore that devastated Bonita Beach, Naples, and Fort Myers. Same thing is going to happen from Altamaha Sound down to Flagler Beach. So that's a huge swath. That's hundreds of miles of shoreline there, maybe 150 miles. We could see catastrophic flooding. The flooding is going to start from Patrick Air Force Base and extend all the way up to Cape Lookout. So look out. Indeed. Frozen, thank you for the $1.99 super sticker. We appreciate you. That's a Frozen boom in the room. So awesome to that. Also, Elton Butterfield, thank you for hitting the thumbs up. Dr. Enoch, we love you. We're going to boom you out for your 9.99 billion galactic thanks super chat. And I still have Elton Butterfield up here, and I can't get him off. How dare you, Elton? There it is. All right, let's. Saucy Wench is in the house. Thank you, Sierra 5. Hopefully we can get them likes up. Let's pump them likes up. Yeah, Jupiter coming in close. No, the reason the storm increased above the forecast was because of the space weather event we pointed out 48 hours ago. There was a stealth CME that came in during the coronal hole, pushed us up into a geomagnetic storm the moment that Ian moved off of Cuba. So it reached the warm waters as soon as that energy was put into the global electric circuit. It pulsed down through the poles and into the equator. And, well, Ian was charged with geomagnetic energy from an event that was unpredicted. So the intensification has nothing to do with you, CO2, climate change. It has everything to do with the fact that weather on Earth, weather systems are affected directly by geomagnetic storms and the sun. So when we have huge amounts of energy coming in from geomagnetic events, like the one we just saw 48 hours ago, as Ian passed over Cuba, you're going to get storms to intensify and or change direction. Now, this storm made a little shift to the right, but it barely changed from the main trajectory. I mean, change direction like make a left. But this one certainly intensified. So this is another great example of how space weather not only affects human health, but it affects mental health and it affects storms, because even the storms are going to affect the mental health in all of these places. So, and that's a very unfortunate thing. I want to thank you all for tuning in tonight. Eric Court with a $3 super sticker. We appreciate you, man. I am exhausted and I got to go to sleep. I could do this all night if I had the moxie, but my moxie is waning. So I don't need to be explaining. Snoopy Doe, thank you, bro. I never even heard of you, but we love you. And so we're going to pick this all up in the morning. And hopefully we'll get onto some topical videos. I have about 3 or 4 in the wings that I've been wanting to make for the last few days. So we're going to get a really deep night's sleep. I'll wake up early in the morning. If there's anything I have to report, I will on both channels live, but don't expect any live streams to go anytime soon, except for maybe tomorrow night, because that's when we expect the rivers to peak, and we will be sharing you that information live across the interwebs with all 600 to 900 of you that have tuned in tonight. We appreciate each and every one of you. Hit the thumbs up before we click the end broadcast. We thank all of you for your super chats. We don't expect it, but we praise you all for doing it, because it really helps us get the work done we need to get done here. All of you saw that I don't have a garage door behind me, so I'm out in the elements here in the barn tonight. Luckily, it's beautiful, 52 and clear, with the crescent moon that set over the horizon at sunset. That was so beautiful, because I could see the entire moon orb. We live in a dark sky area here, and I guarantee the majority of you have never seen anything like the moon set I saw tonight. So our thoughts and prayers go out to all the people in harm's way tonight in Central Florida, all the people still underwater in Fort Myers and Naples. To my brother, I love you, and his family, I hope you're out of harm's way, and all the people that are suffering. We do this for you. And that's a boom to knowledge. Be safe. We love you. We'll see you soon.